Hey, welcome to Onward Shift's fifth podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you've been following, thank you so much for following. So today we'll be talking about entrepreneurship, but not anyone else's journey, but my own with my last company, VDN Electrics, which was a small installation company which done a bit of maintenance, a bit of testing, but 90% of jobs were installations. Now, I'm going to start by saying with every single podcast I've done, I've changed it ever so slightly. And this one here is going to be interesting for me and for you listeners. And the reason for that is there is no script for this one. So with all my previous podcasts, I've spent hours and hours and hours writing a script and then reading that script out loud, essentially. But with this podcast, it's completely freestyled. So there's most likely going to be a few ums and a load of ahs, and yeah, it will be passionate, I would say. It will definitely show my true colours. So let's get into it. VDN Electrics. I've briefly told you what VDN Electrics is. It's an installation company doing residential and commercial installs, and with a bit of testing, a bit of maintenance. But I want to start just before that. Now, just before that, I was working as a shift engineer in central London, in Heron Tower, which is one of the largest buildings in London. I believe it's the fifth or sixth, but I'm not 100% sure on that anymore. This was a few years ago. So what a shift engineer is, for those that don't know, is an engineer that works 12-hour days and 12-hour nights. Now, don't quote me on this, but I think my schedule went something like work 4 12-hour days, then you get 4 days off, then work 3 12-hour days, and then straight away work 3 12-hour nights. So that's in those 6 days you would work something like 72 hours plus travel time, which is 2 hours, 1 hour there, 1 hour back. So long old week. Then you'd get 4 days off, and then you'd work 4 night shifts, and then you'd get 6 days off. So I believe you worked half of the month, but every shift was 12 hours, and then you get the other half of the month off. Sounds awesome, right? Well, from my personal experience of doing this for around 9 months, no word of a lie, it's probably one of the hardest things I've had to do work-wise. Imagine eating dinner at, 8 p.m. one evening, and then the very next evening, you're eating dinner at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. It really messed my food cycle up. And not just that, my sleep cycle went completely down the drain. I'll be trying to sleep, getting to deep sleep during the day when it's bright. And at night time, I'd have to stay awake. So it was really, really difficult. But while I was at this job, the bonus of it was I got a considerable amount of time off work, because I had sometimes, 4 days and 6 days off shift. And in those days, I thought to myself, I don't want to sit at home and be bored, so let me start a company. And that company was VDN Electrics. Now, before my shifts and after my shifts, I'd actually go off and do small jobs. Like, I'm talking install a Ring doorbell for £20. For me, it was all about the experience and gaining that knowledge and just building that confidence of going out there and being the face of a company. And as time went on, I continued working as a shift engineer, and the jobs I started doing for VDN Electrics grew. They went from £20 a day or a job to, no word of lie, £50 a day. Yeah. I was absolutely, bringing it in at that stage. No, but all jokes aside, it went from £20 a day to like £50 a day. And in that day, I'd most likely, install a Ring doorbell, let's say, and install a few light fittings and maybe change a couple of sockets. So for 50 quid, it would take, half a day. I'd go out and do that, do those small jobs. And as time went on, again, the jobs got bigger, and it would be maybe change a fuse board or whatever it was. So I decided that it was time to leave the engineering role and start VDN Electrics, my sole income. So I made it into a job, essentially. And that's when it got hard. It genuinely did get quite hard. All of a sudden, it was the only income I was bringing in, and you start panicking because I had a mortgage to pay, and I'm starting this new company. So, like most contractors, I jumped on all the lead generation sites there are out there. So, My Builder, Check a Trade, Trust a Trader, Rated People. God, I'm sure there's loads more out there. I can't remember all the ones I was on, to be fair. And then I even advertised on Gumtree, Facebook, Instagram. It was all that was literally all the marketing I was doing. And over time, the company grew and grew and grew. And monthly, the jobs kept coming in. And all of a sudden, I found myself quite busy. I could comfortably fill 6 days a week, 7 if I really wanted to. And it was amazing. It was all of a sudden this vision I had, during my night shifts at work of, being self-employed and going out there and, creating this whole new company. It was so exciting. It was the adrenaline was crazy. It was so fun and everything was going so smoothly. It got to the stage that I think in the first 6 months or something like that, I actually purchased my first van, which was really cool because soon after that, I branded the van and it was amazing. Really, really, truly amazing. I'll tell you a funny story, actually. Before I bought the van, and I probably have a picture of this somewhere, I used to go to jobs in a smart car, in a 2-seater smart car. I used to put the ladders and the tools all in the front seat, and in the boot I'd have all the materials. And honestly, it's so embarrassing to say this out loud now, but I used to actually sometimes have to drop materials off to jobs and come back home, pick up my tools and go back to the job to actually do the job, to start the work. So yeah, I definitely, had some fun times, and you can imagine the client's face when I've had to tell them I've had to just go home to pick up my tools. But by the end of most jobs, customers loved me. I was very personable and always put my heart and soul into every single job I did. And, we really, really did try our best with every single job. Anyway, fast forward to, let's say, the first year. I'm really psyched at this stage. I've got a van, got a brand, got marketing everywhere now, even built my first website. I think at this stage, actually, I probably built my first website, and then the second website, which was a revamp of the first one, that was already done. So things were moving really smoothly. And I think I was in a position now to take on board an apprentice, an electrician, and an administrator. Now, that's amazing. Like, for me personally, that would have been one of the biggest achievements of my career at that stage. And unfortunately, all of it went downhill. So now we've spoken all about these highs. You know exactly what I was doing. And, I forgot to mention, by the first year, I actually raised the money from, that £20 for the Ring doorbell, the £50 a day, to, at this stage, probably charging around £250 a day. So it's, massive growth there. And then this massive thing happened in my personal life. I won't go into it, but let's just say it was detrimental to my mental health. And because my mental health went so down, the company actually started failing miserably. I managed to quarter the income of the company, and that, to anyone, imagine having an X amount of money and then all of a sudden having just a quarter of that money. So surviving off that is genuinely really hard. And it's not because you're used to a lifestyle, because that money, you was investing in the business and actually having like a little bit of a personal life and all the rest of it. But yeah, so I had this massive family problem, and it basically meant that my mental health completely deteriorated. Like, honestly, it fully deteriorated. I physically struggled to get out of bed. I wasn't that bubbly fish who would talk to every customer. I struggled, doing the jobs that I was doing because, I was consistently feeling crap. I would do a job in the customer's eyes would look perfect. In my eyes, I'd consistently fault my own work. It was basically just me consistently going downhill. Not only that, quartering your income meant that paying the mortgage was genuinely really hard. And I think for quite a while, I lived off eating Weetabix minis and Cocoa Pops. Yeah, and it was that challenging. And then, now not only my mental health is going down, my physical health is also going down because I'm not getting any good foods. I'm literally just scoffing whatever I can eat and just, surviving, I guess. So, yeah, it was difficult. And these are the lows of having a business. Because unfortunately at this stage, there's no manager to call up and say, I don't feel well, or, no one's going to pay you sick pay. No one's going to say, yeah, take a week off work and use it as holiday or anything. This is now, if I don't snap out of this, I'm not entirely sure where I'd end up, in all honesty. And you can also start, I guess, appreciating, if you're painting this picture, that it's a very lonely place as well. My girlfriend was, at this stage of our relationship, 100 miles away because she lived, 100 miles away, literally. And my closest family, who I was really close to, lived 400 miles away. So I'm sat there in a flat every day by myself, quite frankly, just in this rut, couldn't get out of it, genuinely was struggling with it all. But anyway, moving forward, because you have to always move forward. You always have to find solutions and you always have to consistently move forward. I scraped up a bit of money and I started seeing a coach who was a massive help. She asked all these questions and she asked all these things that challenged me consistently to just take very small steps forward. And I did. I managed to get onto, I don't know if you know what Prince's Trust is, but Prince's Trust is a charity that helps young entrepreneurs. And I was just in the age bracket to be a part of their entrepreneur scheme. So I'd done all this paperwork. I went to the seminars and I built a whole business plan. I think it was like 30 pages or something crazy. And, I applied for it, and no word of a lie, I was over the moon when I found out that I got accepted and I was assigned a business mentor. So I've seen my life coach and things are going really well there. I've perked myself up and managed to get this business coach on board, which I thought would be amazing. But yeah, I'll tell you a funny story about that actually. But it was all going well. And the time frame here, by the way, was about a year. It was a year of just consistently going downhill. And it was only around the 9-month mark where it started slowly going uphill again. The business started making a little bit more money. I could just breathe a little bit more. At this stage, I was just keeping my head just above water to not drown. I laugh a lot about this now, but at the time, I assure you, it was no laughing matter. But you have to look back in life and laugh, otherwise, you end up crying. But yeah, I was in a really good headspace and got this business mentor on board. I won't say his name because I don't think it'll be fair to him. But he was interesting. Having a mentor, I've never had a business mentor before. I've never run a company before. But I thought that a business mentor will tell you what to do to make your company successful. And he tried to do that, but our visions didn't align. I very much focused on VDN Electrics being a completely independent contractor. So we didn't work for builders, we didn't work for estate agents, we didn't work for the council, we didn't work for landlords with more than 5 properties. We basically worked for homeowners and only homeowners. I sort of followed the Pimlico plumbers, what they did with their company, and I kind of followed that. And my business mentor will consistently be like, yeah, no, you need to contact every builder in the area, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this. And unfortunately, me being me, I didn't listen because I genuinely believed that my way of running the company was the right way. And in the 3 years I run the company, I have to admit I was right. I think it's so important for entrepreneurs to pursue their vision. And the reason for this is nobody really will understand your vision to the level you understand it. You probably, think about it the second you wake up. You probably think about it till the second you fall asleep. You've got all of these things bouncing around in your head. And for me personally, I only take advice that I feel is going to be beneficial. If it's not really going to be beneficial, then, or if it doesn't align with my path, I tend not to follow it because it just doesn't make sense to me to follow it. So anyway, me and my business mentor would always have little arguments about it, and he would try and sell it to me and I'll try to sell him it's not a good idea. Overall, in my opinion, it was a good idea not to do that. Anyway, that's the funny story of my business mentor and me having, you can just probably imagine it over Zoom, two guys just having it out about two different visions which just didn't align. But anyway, I saw this gentleman for, it was probably about 2 years. And weirdly, over the time, he started believing in my vision and we ended up agreeing that my vision was going to work for me. But it was interesting because at that time, he actually became a friend. He wasn't a mentor at this stage. He was just a friend who I would check in with every month. And it's so important because entrepreneurship is so lonely. Honestly, nobody really understands what you're going through unless if you're in the same boat. So I loved going to networking events and I loved having my check-ins with my mentor every month. Because when you're working as an entrepreneur, me personally, I didn't really have the time to go out with socializing and things like that. I was too busy building this company. So when you're going through your journey, if you're thinking about going through your journey, there's one thing I'd always say to everyone who's starting up, or even if they're in business for like 20 years, don't lose your friendships on the way. Just because you're working doesn't mean you have to lose those friendships or those relationships that you had spent years before the company working on. I made the mistake of slowly but surely isolated myself from everyone because I was too busy working. And when I needed people most, unfortunately, they weren't there because I already sabotaged those relationships, which is really sad. So make sure you don't just focus on work. All of these, motivational people out there, you don't have to follow their journeys. Anyway, what my point is don't lose your relationships because of entrepreneurship. Relationships will be there forever. So just hold on to them. But anyway, going back onto VDN Electrics, one of the key things that I found to help me grow in that first year was I set myself clear goals of from 0 months to 12 months. This is what I want to achieve by the 12th month. And I always found, for me, again, this is just very personal. For me, I found I would break. So I'd have the moon goal of where I want to be at the end of those 12 months. And to get to that moon goal, I broke it down into 3, 6, 9, and then a 12 month. So I'd break it down to what I want to achieve in 0 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 months to 9 months, 9 months to 1 year. And that really helps because when you look at the moon goal, by the way, the moon goal for me is the unachievable goal, which you kind of strive for. You don't make it so unachievable that it's impossible. You make it hard to get to, so it's sort of challenging. But anyway, so when sometimes you look at this really hard goal to achieve at the end of the year, you're like, impossible to get there. But if you break it down into smaller goals, you get a sense of satisfaction, you get this momentum going, it's really fun. And by the end of the year, hopefully you would have completed everything you want to complete and most likely more. Because if you don't know this, entrepreneurship is like a roller coaster. There's loads of ups and loads of downs. But in the end, you tend to get to where you want to get to. Just you probably find different ways to get there. Anyway, so that's how I set goals in the company. And I'm going to go back to that troublesome period, the second year of the company. One of the things that helped me get through it was realizing I needed help. And seeking help is really difficult because you don't ever want to be vulnerable. And I talk about vulnerability in every single one of my podcasts in one way or another, because it's something that I find every single person struggles with, but they don't need to. I just want to emphasize that you don't need to feel guilty or scared to show vulnerability. If you need help, reach out and ask someone for help, be it your partner, your friend, it can even be your neighbor. It doesn't matter who, just ask for help. Get that ball rolling to get you back on track. Anyway, let's get back onto video and electrics again. So come the third year, this is the sad year, because this was the final year I done video and electrics. So first year went really successful. Second year had its considerable downs, but by the end of the second year, things were going up again. And I stumbled upon another issue. So everything's now going smoothly. The money's starting to flow in. The customers are starting to come back. And all of a sudden, my van breaks down. Now, for anyone who owns a van or a vehicle, that is when you get the engine management light come on your vehicle, your heart kind of drops, because you're like, God, not this. Anything but this. Anyway, again, you have to laugh about it or you just end up crying about it. Took it to the mechanics and it cost about $2,500 to repair. It was something to do with the engine management wasn't working with the AdBlue system, and I had to have a new module put into it or whatever it was. So not only did it cost me $2,500 to repair that, just as things were going smoothly, it also took me out of work for a couple of weeks. But that is what entrepreneurship is. It's the taking the rough with the smooth. And right now it sounds like there's been a lot of rough, but it hasn't been, because every single rough teaches you something new, which is important to remember. Failure is winning. And I've actually believed in that so much, I've got it tattooed to my bicep, my inner bicep. And for anyone who's ever had a tattoo, inner biceps, painful, very, very painful. So, yes. But anyway, so now, well, hey, things are looking up again. I've had the van repaired. Fingers crossed nothing else breaks down. And luckily it didn't, thankfully. I went on to carrying on working really hard, and I was in a position to take on someone. I was finally at the stage of employing someone, and I was so excited. Honestly, I went out and I searched for this perfect person, and I thought I found him. I won't name his name, but I checked his CV, it was perfect. I checked his socials, it was perfect. I've done, I think, a couple of interviews with him, perfect. Even on the job, he was so passionate and hungry, and it's just perfect. And one day on a job, I stumbled upon an issue. And the issue was the customer come over to me and said, some of my materials are missing. And I said, what do you mean by that? Like, missing? He said, well, I won't say what's missing, but a few accessories he had purchased have gone. And I was like, it's impossible. There's only 2 people with the keys, and I haven't taken it, that's for sure. Anyway, long story short, ended up figuring out it was the employee. Now, how uncomfortable is that conversation with a customer, telling them that, I'm really sorry, but your stuff has been stolen. Anyway, very awkward conversation, but the way I handled it was the best I could handle it. And that was, I had an honest conversation. I was extremely transparent. I made sure he never went back to that job. And I reimbursed every single, to the penny, everything. And there was no questions asked. There was no issues. I didn't even need to see the receipts. I trusted that whatever was taken, and it was time just to move on from this. So it was very difficult to have this conversation, and it was obviously another financial hit. But reimbursing the money, and this is where it's so important to have that openness, the transparency, and personality whilst you're, self-employed. Because by the end of this job, although I had made a loss, which means I didn't make a profit on the job, I did walk away with a 5-star review and a returning customer. Because no matter how bad the situation, and that situation is quite bad, if you handle things correctly in the right manner, then there is a chance you can keep that customer on board. And thankfully, over the duration of the next year, he had given me enough work to, you know, to build a really strong relationship with him. So you can make good out of a bad situation. And yeah, so there's some really lows. So now you've kind of got the point, right? Entrepreneurship, you can have some real highs and you can have some real lows, and you can have some fun times with business mentors. It's quite funny again. I just always laugh at that. And I always get asked this one question: is there anything that I kind of follow, or is there anything that I kind of, use as my mantra? I guess essentially, and weirdly, it's something I made up one day. I was probably bored, and I thought, oh, let me, do this, and it's PPE, and that's not personal protective equipment. It is plan, prepare, execute. I won't go into too much detail on this, but basically, what it means is, before I go into anything, it could be a really difficult job or starting a company, I do PPE. And the first P stands for plan, and that means you brainstorm, you plan, you do all the things you need to do, create a business plan, create a survival budget, etc., to think of all the ups and downs of the company. And then the second P stands for prepare. So this is where you emotionally, mentally, and physically prepare for the wins and the losses, the highs and the lows. And you also emotionally prepare just in case the business doesn't work out, which unfortunately does happen, but you have to be emotionally prepared for that. And once you're in a position where you've done the first two Ps, it's time for the E, and that's execute. You're ready to take on the next challenge. You've done all the hard work of planning it and preparing for it. It's time to just go into it and you run at it. But that's, again, just something that I've always followed. And it's always worked for me, personally. Now, there's something else that, I can't remember who it was, but they asked me, and that was, what's one of the key strengths you need in entrepreneurship? And I thought about this for a while, because there's so many you need. Honestly, there's so many key skills you need. But I think, for me again, it had to be resilience. There's no giving up. There's no stopping. There's no slowing down. You keep on going. Through the rough days, you still show up. You might do bare minimal, but you still show up. And you keep fighting for what you believe in. And respectfully, always, is always the first answer to yes. So if a customer might turn around and say to you on one job, unfortunately, you're not the right contractor for this one or the right company for this one, that doesn't always mean you're not going to be the right customer for the next one. So always keep in touch with customers, always ask how they are and if they've got anything going for you at the time, because you never know, they might, and this job might come your way. But the resilience side of things, I think, is really important for every entrepreneur out there to pursue. It's a hard skill to maintain, but you have to. You can't stop. You really can't. You just have to keep going, and you have to keep finding ways and solutions to get to where you need to get to. Now, one of the things that I forgot to mention on the loneliness side of things, something that I found has helped me quite a bit is going to networking events. I love going to a networking event for a couple of reasons. One, it gets me away from the desk or the tools. Two, it surrounds me with like-minded people, which is honestly a breath of fresh air sometimes. And I think for those two reasons, I do networking events a lot. For example, with Onward Shift, I try and do 9 to 10 networking events every single month. And now that sounds like a lot, but you start building relationships, you start seeing familiar faces, and you start going, actually, I really, really want to get to know you. And I love what you've been doing. Your journey is incredible. And you start learning from new people. And believe it or not, you start also teaching other people. And you never know where the next opportunity is. So, if you are going for a lonely patch, maybe just scheduling a networking event. Most of them are free. And if they're not free, they're usually less than a tenner. So it's very affordable. That takes me on to hard times. When you're going through hard times, and trust me when I say I've been through hard times, there's one thing you have to do. other than asking for help is, like I mentioned before, you just have to keep going. You have to keep pursuing that goal and those dreams. And when things get really hard, just remember things will get better. It's just a roller coaster you're on. So yeah, that is my opinion of entrepreneurship. There's loads and loads and loads of lessons to learn, and every day's a learning day, as they say. There's always going to be highs and there's always going to be lows, but remember, from both you will have opportunities to learn and become better. Even when you're right at the top of your game, just remember, be humble, be modest, and always take the time to learn. And one thing, actually, before I end this podcast, is just remember not to compare yourself to others in an unhealthy way. Compare it, like admiring your competition is actually not a bad thing to do, because it will give you opportunities to learn and grow. But remember not to compare yourself. Like, this is one of my biggest flaws. I compare myself to, the Elon Musks and the Stephen Bartletts of the world. That's not healthy, because they're on a different journey to me. And when you consistently compare yourselves to these mega successful people, it actually doesn't motivate you, it puts you down. So just bear that in mind. It might not even be, the celebrities of this. It could also be someone you follow on Instagram who you're constantly comparing yourself to. Just remember, they're on their own journey and you are on yours. So make sure you don't compare yourself to others' successes, because you don't know what's going on behind the scenes for them. Now, I always give a little bit of homework. It's a breath of fresh air for you. There is no homework on this one. This is just a general chat about my journey with my first company. Now, one thing I would like to say is, with Onward Shift, the new company I've created, I have been so blessed to go through all the troublesome times of VDN, because with VDN I learned so much, and it's hard to see it at the time, but now, 3 years later, I've learned so much. And with Onward Shift, I'm hoping you guys see something special. You see a different Vish. You see a more positive Vish, and you see a more fun Vish. I'm Vish, by the way, just in case you forgot. But yeah, I'm really excited to see where Onward Shift goes and how far I can take it. I hope you guys have enjoyed this podcast. Sorry for all the ums and the ahs and all the mistakes. And, this is my first ever podcast freestyling. So I genuinely hope, at the bottom of my heart, you've enjoyed it. I would honestly love your feedback. So please send it over to journey@onwardshift.com. With that feedback, I'll get better. And if I can get better, I'm hoping I can help more people and reach out to more people. If you did obviously like this podcast, please do share it with a friend. And if you want to know a bit more about Onward Shift, then check out our socials or check out our website. Most of the stuff is on our website, and that's onwardshift.com. I hope you have an amazing day or night whenever you're listening to it.